Okay, it's time. Welcome everybody, Saturday Matters. We're all eagerly anticipating this. We just love Anne's presentations. She's a nutritionist by training and occupation. This is a different kind of feast, which we've all enjoyed thoroughly. And here's number 3, and it's all ready. Our videographer is in position. Our Life Enrichment has set everything up so that it's working fine. And welcome to Anne.
Well, thank you again, everybody, for coming. As you saw in Parks Trip number 1, we covered the west via car. Parks Trip number 2 was heading east, and then the east via car. So this trip is all the other little pieces, which I mentioned to you that we didn't want to do Washington and Oregon in April because it was too cold. So those trips were done when we could camp and enjoy the wildflowers. I'll show you that. We have Wyoming. We went to Alaska for 2 trips, 4 parks each trip. And then there were the new parks that were created or upgraded during COVID, and then all the island parks. So here we go. So North Cascades, not too far from here. Ed and I have camped here many, many times. We've seen huge fires here. We've learned about reintroduction programs for a member of the weasel family called the fisher, and also reintroduction programs for the grizzlies. In 2024, federal agencies finalized a plan to translocate grizzlies to North Cascades National Park. On our most memorable trip, we were camping up at Hearts Paths with some friends enjoying our dinner when a ranger came into camp and told us we needed to pull up camp and evacuate now because of an approaching fire. By the time we were all packed up, it was dark. We had to drive down the infamous Hearts Pass Road, which is a narrow, unpaved shelf road that clings to steep mountainsides with unprotected drop-offs and no guardrails. Okay, so I'm going to show you, basically I'm just going to show you some pictures of North Cascades and then I'll continue telling my story. This is Ross Lake, where we actually watched helicopters come in and bucket water up to go deal with the fire. And then here are some of the beautiful mountains. My beloved husband Ed standing by a tree. Don't worry, someone told me last time, we don't know that you're in these parks because there aren't any pictures of you. There's pictures of me today. And then also gorgeous mountains and lakes. All right, so our friends, we were camping up at Hearts Pass with our friends Diana and Clint, and they wanted to backpack from Hearts Pass to Rainy Pass. So the plan was that we would all drive up there and then they would backpack to Rainy Pass. I would drive their car to Rainy Pass and would drive our car. Well, that was a great plan, except now we're being evacuated. So I drove their car to Rainy Pass. Actually, I drove their car down to the bottom where the ranger said, you're down far enough, you can camp here, and Ed drove the Subaru, and of course he got a flat tire on this miserable road. Yeah, so our other friends that were with us, Bill and Sue, we all helped and got that tire changed and put the donut on, and then camped at lower ground, took it into Winthrop, and then the following morning for the tire to be repaired. And then we got to drive up to Rainy Pass to meet our friends, Diana and Clint. Well, they had become friendly with 3 Pacific Crest Trail thru hikers. And since the thru hikers had also been pulled off the trail, like 30 miles from the border to Canada, they'd been hiking since Mexico, they were distraught and very sad, and everybody was disappointed for them. We learned several things about thru hikers. You know, they managed to somehow not carry a lot of weight, but they also have amazing trail names. So there was one called Crush. He was a stunning, blonde, blue-eyed, dimpled, gorgeous white teeth kind of guy. Hard to figure that one out, right? The other guy was called Giving Tree, and he was a tall beanpole kind of guy who used to do a lot of yoga on the trail. So that's how he got his name. But anyway, we were sad for them and frustrated that they got pulled off, and we gave them rides to Seattle so that they could leave the trail and go back to their jobs. So, beautiful times and beautiful sights to see in North Cascades. Of course, we have to talk about Mount Rainier National Park, which is pretty much in our backyard. This is one of our favorite parks. Ed likes to go snowshoeing here every year, and I like to hit it when the wildflowers are in bloom. So one of my favorite trails is the trail to Burroughs Mountain. And if you park up at sunrise, and you take the trail behind the ranger station, pretty much you get views of Mount Rainier most of the way along this trail. And then the gorgeous, gorgeous wildflowers. We camped here several times in many different campgrounds during the course of our 27-year marriage. Olympic National Park, further on down, it's a little different in that there is a ton of moss in this park. And it's a temperate rainforest with 12 to 14 feet of rain annually. So we were most intrigued and later saddened when we heard the story about mountain goats that were being translocated. Remember I talked about fishers and grizzlies? Well, the mountain goat thing didn't go so well. Olympic National Park had mountain goats, but they were invasive. They were not natural to the Olympic National Park, and they were mountains, so they were up high, but they were eating all of the natural growth that was there. And they also, the Olympic National Park doesn't have a lot of salts in the land, nor in the things that grow there, so these goats are salt-seeking. So they started to become aggressive towards humans because they really wanted urine and sweat. And so the park rangers would not tolerate that. And they decided that these goats needed to be transported to North Cascades National Park, where goats are native. Unfortunately, the stress of being shot with net guns or tranquilizer darts, blindfolded, and then airlifted in a sling from one park to another took a heavy toll on the number of goats that survived. And then the ones that did survive, after being translocated, they had ongoing challenges because they had to try to find high quality food in an area where the forest wasn't anywhere near as dense as in Olympic, and had to survive the harsh winters of North Cascades. But they were disoriented because they didn't live here before, so they had difficulty finding shelter, which made them more susceptible to being food for predators. So as a result of all this, after 5 years of tracking 151 collared goats, only 4 remained alive. So that was really sad, especially since the natural lifespan of a wild goat in the wild is 12 to 15 years. So that's an example of an animal translocation thing that did not go so well. However, the park is beautiful for all that moss, including on the rivers. So on down is Crater, and the blue of Crater Lake is like no other. We were lucky to spend a full week here. We also took a boat ride to see the lake sides from a closer vantage point. So the slide on the right, this is called Phantom Ship. And I took this picture from the boat. And then there's also this floating tree trunk, which actually is 30 feet tall, most of which is underwater. It's thought to be mountain hemlock. It's called Old Man of the Lake and has been bobbing around in the water since 1896. Pretty amazing. The lodge has an outdoor bar where you can sit in Adirondack chairs and enjoy the stunning view and have a cold beer after having hiked all day. So it's really a favorite and quite beautiful there. So you can see I'm really present on these trips. All right, so we went to the Tetons. We've been to the Tetons a couple of times. This most recent trip, we went with our friends Phil and Sue. And they travel in a camper van, which for some reason always has mechanical issues. And so they were a day behind us. We got here on this trip with them and had gorgeous weather this first day with stunning views of the Tetons. And then also hiked several trails around that gave us views of these water areas. Unfortunately, the next day when Phil and Sue arrived, the view on the left is what they got compared to a later view later on that week. And then you can also see that some of the park is grassland. So it's quite an interesting place. And as all this stuff in the West, stunningly beautiful. Someone made the comment to me that they liked the Western trip better than the Eastern trip, And it's so true. What we have out here is so beautiful, and some of the eastern parks, they just don't hold a candle, except for maybe Acadia. All right, so I showed you a slide from Yellowstone on our last trip, but since we're really officially doing Wyoming today, I have to put more Yellowstone pictures in here. Yellowstone, of course, there's Old Faithful, which manages to spout regularly, thus its name, Old Faithful. And right now it's erupting every 102 minutes or so. It's spectacular. You also have here this slide of Mammoth Falls. I showed you a similar slide last time. And we were lucky enough to see some good wildlife. So there's a pronghorn antelope here on your left, and then a bison with a baby bison. And you all know about animal jams. Normal city life, we have traffic jams, and in these parks you have animal jams. When the buffalo decide to cross the street, there's a whole herd, and they kind of amble along. They're bigger than your car, so you just sit and then wait. They're on their own timeline. And then, of course, there are the geysers and the springs at Yellowstone. So this one on your left is Blue Star Spring. It has an average temperature of about 190 degrees Fahrenheit. And of course, there's signs all over the boardwalks that say, extremely hot temperature, 190 degrees, don't put your foot in it, and of course, somebody always does. Not a good idea. Also intriguing to me was the fact that you can see in the orange colors of one of the springs next to the Blue Star Spring, these orange colors are caused by thermophile, meaning heat-loving bacteria and microorganisms. So, for example, cyanobacteria and then green non-sulfur bacteria grow in this really hot water. So, now we're going to go to Alaska. Alaska has 8 national parks, and they are amazing. So we took the ferry, the Washington State Ferry, up to Alaska with our friends Phil and Sue, the same ones that we had traveled to the Tetons with. And the moss here is stunningly beautiful. The carved tree is one of the Tlingit historical trail markers signifying ancestral homelands and ancient trail routes. We were able to stay in the lodge here and to do several nice hikes. Oh, I have to tell you before I forget. So because we were going to Alaska, we said, oh my gosh, we're going to Alaska, there's bears in Alaska, we have to take bear spray, right? So bear spray is fine on the ferry, and it's fine on the train, nobody ever asks about it. But remember that, because we're gonna come back to that, okay? So now here we are, showed you the Tlingit carving. And on a hike, we ran into a research subject moose, complete with a numbered collar around her neck. Our friend Phil decided he didn't like the numbered collar, so he photoshopped it out, but we have the real thing here. And then we decided on a whim to chase down some totem pole carvers who were actually carving in the back of the schoolyard. They had this covered area, and they were very excited that we were very interested in, oops, sorry. So they were kind enough to explain to us, they have a drawing of what they want to do, and then they enlarge it. And it's a very long and detailed process, which is no surprise. We learned that one of their carvers the week prior had cut his finger seriously and had to be airlifted to Harborview Medical Center. So it's not a skill to be undertaken lightly. All right, so we also got to see some glaciers at Glacier Bay, and we were on a boat to view these. The blue is blue, and the colors are amazing, and we watched them calve, meaning part of the glacier falling off. It does make quite a noise, and then there's an echo. Also, the thing to notice here is that, these glaciers aren't flat. There's a lot of upwards texture to them, and so walking on these glaciers would be really, really challenging, because it's like walking on a saw. They're not quite as sharp, but spectacular nonetheless. All right, so we have to take the train to Denali. We still have our bear spray with us. And Denali is the one park that has working sled dogs. And it was kind of fun because as part of the tours that you could choose, we could go and meet the sled dogs. Of course, they're in their kennels or sitting on top of their dog houses. And they do a show where they show how they've trained them, and we get to watch them run around the track, which obviously isn't the same as snow. But these dogs are chosen for their capability to do work and their work ethic. They need deep insulating coats, tough compact feet, lean muscular bodies, cardiovascular stamina, and a psychological drive to run. They must love to run because they have to pull for hundreds of miles. So that was fun to learn about them. The other thing about Denali is that there's a road that passenger vehicles are only allowed for like the first 7 miles or so, but the road goes 90 miles in. While we were here, there had recently been the first of many landslides, and so the bus trip, instead of going 90 miles, could only go 62 miles. Nonetheless, it was still a very long day because we had to get there at 6, we got done at 7, and this was a school bus on an unpaved road. We, of course, stopped for breaks and for food and stuff, but the very enthusiastic driver points out your animals and keeps a long running list on the whiteboard, so by the end of the day you have 30 animals on your list and you feel very privileged to have seen so many animals. And this is a grizzly wandering through the grass, kind of a blonde guy, lots of big fur. He looks like a giant mop from here. And then our peekaboo view of Denali, which we got lucky. Many, many people don't even get this. It wasn't perfect, but it was pretty close. And then, of course, there's several hikes that you can take, and this is what it looks like without any snow outside the visitor center. All right, so now we take the train, the Denali Star, back and I think to Anchorage, visit our friends Kim and Brent, and then take a plane to the area where we drive a bit and then take a plane to the area where we are going to be going to Wrangell St. Elias National Park. This is one of Ed's favorite parks. It is huge. It's the size of Switzerland. At the time, in 2016, it had 10,000 glaciers, and 1/4 of the park was ice. It's famous because of the copper mining that used to occur here. And here, this red building is the Kennecott Lodge, that in the past was a miner's lodge, and now it's the Park Lodge. It's old and rustic, and we were reminded that we don't do very well with bathrooms down the hall. Anyway, we managed. Here we did a glacier hike, and this ice is different in that you don't have that sawtooth kind of look. And we were on boots with crampons, and this is a Mulan, which was beautiful. You can see the blue in the ice. The Mulans are deep, well-like vertical shafts that are formed when the surface melt water streams exploit a weakness or a crevasse in the ice. So then you have this rushing water melting and eroding a path. It's kind of like a vortex, creating a pipe that can plunge hundreds of meters into the glacier's interior. So you do not want to fall in one of these. We also, you can see here the view and the ice that happens to be here. We also had the opportunity to kayak in the 34-degree water with dry suits on. You could kayak right up to the ice and examine the ice crystals, which had rocks in them. So the small rocks kind of look like viewing through an aquarium, a mix of clear marbles and tiger's eye marbles. It was quite beautiful. But again, those old man bladders don't do very well in a wetsuit in a kayak. We tipped the guide very heavily because he helped us out. All right, so remember I talked about that bear spray? So that bear spray proved to be a problem on a commercial airline flight. I remember looking at the list of things that you can't bring, and it didn't actually explicitly say anything about bear spray. So I talked to the person at the desk, and she looked at me like I was growing horns, thinking like, are you crazy? You can't have bear spray on an airplane. What happens if it goes off? You've got pepper spray in the cabin and nobody can fish. All of which were recognizable as the common tropical fish. So you see tiny butterfly fish and tiny Moorish idols and tiny triggerfish, etc. And we saw, but it was like, this must be a nursery where they're protected because it's shallow enough that the big fish aren't coming in to eat them. So it was really fun to see them in the little. We also got to see some blue starfish. the other thing that was going on while we were there, the following week was Flag Day, and the Samoans are really, really big into their long boats and racing the long boats. I took some pictures of men that were practicing, but they were too far away to be decent. But this picture shows you the long boat, and there's room for like 50 oarsmen or people paddling. And then this is a model of an old outrigger style canoe that was part of the traditional Samoan heritage as well. That was interesting. Okay, so last on our trip was the American Virgin Islands. This was park number 63 for us. We just went to this park in April, a few months back, and it was quite beautiful. We flew to Atlanta, and then we flew to St. Thomas and drove from St. Thomas onto a ferry and then to St. John. So these islands also have coastal roads, and then if you want to go across the island or up, it's like up. Our VRBO host, vacation rental by owner host, said, if you want to come to my place, you need to rent a Jeep because the roads are so steep and so crazy. And that was terrifying because Samoa, because of its history, they drive on the left. But because it's a U.S. territory, the cars are American cars, so the pilot is also on the left. So I got this red ribbon and pulled it hanging down from the handle thing next to the driver's window. The ribbon was like 3 feet long to remind me that this is where the grassy part needed to be, right here. And it went pretty well. Our VRBO host had said, you know, you'll do okay. It's the first day that's the worst. There's lots of goats and sheep wandering the island, and everybody has to drive slow because of those wild goats. And I said, okay, that's good. I'm happy to hear that. We also, here on this picture, have an iguana. This was the first animal that we saw right outside the National Parks Office where we were getting our stamps and stickers. So because of her affirming, you'll do fine, the hard parts will be when you first get up in the morning, and if you have to enter a roundabout and there's no car in front of you, that'll be challenging, but luckily we did okay. There's not a lot of traffic on the island. But as long as we're talking about car things, I will tell you that we got our rental car, we're driving around the first day, the morning of the second day, I get in the car and I notice, this is a new car with all computer, the 3 wheels, the PSI is 45, and 1 wheel is like 33. It's like, oh no, we have a leak. So we get down the road and we stop kind of in the middle of going from west to east. There's this Johnny's Bar. We stop at Johnny's Bar. There's this nice big tree where we can park the car, and we call, and this man comes and he's going to fix our tire for us. And he tells us all about his head injury, which should have been a red flag. But anyway, so he gets his scuba tank and he fills the tire with air from the scuba tank, and then he pours water on it and sees the little bubbles. You know, all this normally happens in a garage shop and we don't get to watch it, right? It's similar to bicycle tire changing. He pours the water and finds the bubbles, and then he sticks this big tool in the tire, and I'm watching him thinking, you're making my hole a lot bigger. But he had to do that in order to get the patch. So he patched it, but he didn't put air in it again. And I didn't figure that out. So we go on our way and we're wandering around. And I said, because I started the car and the PSI on that fourth tire was still like 33. I said, well, when will it go up to 45? He says, oh, you have to drive around a little while. So we drive, we go snorkeling, we come back, and it still says 33. So I talked to the lady at the grocery store. She said, you need to go to the fire department. They'll put air in your tires. So we did. Very kind gentleman, fill our tires with air, and off we went. So we go snorkeling, we have our day, we come back, we go home to our lovely VRBO with this view. We are above this. This is a salt pond. We had a gorgeous patio that was covered where we could eat our breakfast, dinners, lunches were usually out and about, but gorgeous views. And had our second evening, and then got on the road the next morning, and sure enough, that tire says 33 again. It's like, oh no, still leaking. So we decided, I said, you know, if we're gonna go snorkeling, we have to hit the parking lots early, because otherwise they fill. We're going snorkeling first. So we go, this is Cinnamon Beach. We got there, this is a picture taken early in the morning, so that we could get there before the parking lots filled, which meant that I got a nice picture before the crowds came. And it's the longest beach on the island. And, oops, sorry, not yet. So we go snorkeling, we come back, we go back to Johnny's where he can find us, we call again, and the dispatcher calls him and says, "You're not gonna believe it, but that same lady's at the same place with the same car, and she's got the same tire problem." So he comes back and he's all embarrassed. He says, "I've never had to repatch a tire, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Well, I think it's because you didn't put air in afterwards." "Oh, I'm sure I did." So he, of course, did the whole thing again, filled it with air, used the water, find the hole, stick the big tool down there, make a bigger hole, put the patch in. This time, he filled it again with air from the scuba tank. So off we went, PSI 45, thank you. All right, so the other thing that we got to do on this island was visit the ex-slave plantation sugar mill ruins. So this is a windmill. Obviously, it's missing its whatever you call those arms, because this was built between the 16 and 1800s. This slave plantation has documentation. In the 1600s, they had 25 slaves. In the early 1800s, they had 100, and by the mid-1800s, there were 600 slaves working this plantation. And obviously, the windmill only worked when there was wind. So if there wasn't wind, some poor donkey had to go around in circles to crush the sugar cane. This is also a dungeon that was part of the plantation. And I was kind of shocked. There's no basement to this dungeon, and it was the size of a small room, maybe 8 by 10. So I have no idea how many people it fit. It was kind of painful seeing that part of the history. It was interesting in that this plantation was very close to the shore, and the British Virgin Islands were just across the water, maybe a quarter mile. Definitely swimmable if you knew how to swim. So I don't know how many slaves actually successfully escaped. All right, and then more snorkeling. We went to several beautiful beach bays. This one, where the rock is, was where we found the most beautiful fish. They were hanging around on the other side of the rock. So we hadn't elected to take any professional snorkeling trips, and that was fine. As an ex-diver, I've had enough experience with snorkeling sites getting destroyed by boats that come in, and the whole world is there, and people step on the coral and everything. So we knew that we'd have to get away from the beach a little bit to get some decent coral and some decent fish. And that's all I have for you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you so much, Anne. We're really grateful for all of these beautiful and your entertaining stories.
Any questions? Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I see Rita.
And if I wanted to replicate your trip, how much money should I save?
How much money should we save? That's a really good question. Okay, so Rita's asking how much money we spent. So it's very interesting. I think I mentioned that very first trip to the West, we camped a third of the time, we hoteled a third of the time, and we spent a third of the time with friends. It was 110 days, it cost 10 grand. So the second trip to the East, we had 3 places that were more expensive. We were in Quebec City, which was expensive. We stayed in Louisiana during Jazz Festival, and for some reason that hotel was $500 a night because we didn't realize it was Jazz Festival time. And then also on Lake Superior, Isle Royale, we stayed in that lodge, which was also like $500 a night. So that trip was more like 13 or 14 grand. Okay, the Alaska trips were each about 10 because there's so much flying involved. Samoa was close to 10, and Virgin Islands was about 5. So yeah, a lot of money. Spread it out over lots of years.
But it was priceless, right?
It was priceless. Did you have something else to say, Rita?
No, just thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks all for being here. It was priceless. It's been an amazing.
Mother Judy behind you.
Oh, Judy, yeah.
Do you remember Krenicke's book, what the name of it was?
It's wonderful. Do you remember? We can look it up for you because it's easy to find, and yeah, it's a very good book. Carolyn.
I'll just say that PBS ran a great series of episodes about him. And,
About Dick Krenicke?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Krenicke, and I bet you can stream it.
Yes, we watched it, building his cabin.
Yeah.
Right,
It was
right,
very
yeah.
entertaining.
A lot of that footage was his own personal footage.
Could you repeat she said.
You can stream it. PBS has it available, or at least used to, and you can see original footage of him building his cabin and having to deal with people who came in who didn't really respect the land like he thought they should, and the mountain goats, and it's very interesting and impressive. Anybody else?
To a talk Monday morning, which we might escape your attention because it's such an odd time, Monday morning at 9:30. 10:30. There's going to be a talk about the Northwest Aviation Health Alliance.
What?
And the speaker is very good. She was here a while ago, and everybody enjoyed her very much. Her name is Sarah Fox. She's an excellent academic speaker. But just want to call your attention to it. Thank you.
So it's a talk on radiation.
On what?
It's a specialist on radiation, and they're going to have a talk on Monday, was it?
Yeah.
Monday at 10:30 a.m.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks, Ernie.
Anything else? No? Okay, thank you everybody for coming.